It's Friday, which means it's time for another exciting episode of Ask Us Anything, where you send us your pressing questions and we attempt to answer them. This first question is tailor-made for Bahir. At Kailash Laxman asks, we finally got some news on the Green Lantern series. How hyped are you and what are your expectations? Do you think we'll get a parallax tease? I'm going to leave the room while Bahir takes it away.
Hyped? I'm cautiously optimistic. Only because this series has been in development for a long time. It was in development under the previous DC administration led by Snyder, which was going to be a car crash. However, with the recent announcement that Tom King's involved, that
Damon Lindelof.
I'm a little iffy on Damon Lindelof. He's had some run-ins with the bad TV cops, but I am cautiously optimistic. I don't know if we'll get a parallax tease. I actually hope not. I think parallax is
Later.
too big a thing.
Can?
Is later. You don't want to launch it at your first go. I think I'd rather it be about the Green Lantern Corps and just introducing the idea of the Green Lantern Corps to a TV audience first, before you start calling in the color spectrums and Kyle Rayner's White Lantern and Parallax and, all of that stuff. As it is, the Green Lantern Corps has enough baggage to have to get past the TV audience first. Unlike Batman or Superman or Spider-Man, you kind of need an introduction to Green Lantern.
I was just going to say, which is why I like that it's a TV series. I think it doesn't work as a movie because Green Lantern is not as popular as Superman or Batman or Flash. Not everyone knows the history of the lanterns, etc., etc. And I think a TV series gives it time to breathe.
Yeah, and I think not to be the Green Lantern jerk, but Hal Jordan and Alan Scott were founding members of the Justice League and the Justice Society of America. So they're a big deal within the DC universe, right? I think Cyborg is less of a founding member. I think, Hawkgirl is fine. The fact that Green Lantern has been ignored this long shows how much a bad movie can impact an IP. And the bad movie I'm speaking of is Ryan Reynolds' car crash that was Green Lantern. I'm cautiously optimistic, still very hyped. I am curious to see who the final lineup is, because then you can really gauge on what kind of storylines they're going after. So the fact that I've spoken for a long time without Uma jumping in is an indication of how excited I am. But
There you go.
still cautiously optimistic.
There you go. Cautious optimism.
I am Kenny Liu asks, Star Wars was well known to be terrible in its first cut until it was, in air quotes, rescued in the edit. Do you think that there are movies out there which are poorly received but could have been salvaged through better editing?
Yes. With caveats.
With caveats, yeah. I think editing cannot fix a terrible movie, but it can make a bad movie decent, a decent movie good, a good movie potentially great.
Yes, I think editors in every field are some of the most important and often ignored individuals, whether it's in writing a book or podcast or radio or TV or movies. I think the editor is the unsung hero lah. And yeah, there are a lot of movies that could have used some help, but also it really depends how much stuff they had. So it really depends how much they shot, what shots the director decided to use. Sometimes in an edit, it can change the entire direction and flow of a story.
Yeah, and tone.
And
right?
tone of a
It can
movie.
change
for
tone
sure.
of a movie completely easily. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so the edit is very, very important. Kenny Liu did mention Passengers, and I don't know if the edit was the problem with Passengers. I think if you had read the script when it was on the blacklist, it felt tonally different from the movie that we got, even though the movie was similar to the script. And I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes what you read on the page is very different from how it gets interpreted by actors and directors on screen.
The big mistake there was actually the hiring of Chris Pratt. I think Chris Pratt at the time was seen as the quintessential hero, good guy next door thing. And the character in Passengers, at least based off of the script, wasn't that. He was the protagonist, but he wasn't the hero. Whereas I think the movie really wanted to make Chris Pratt the hero.
I totally agree. I think the edit plays a very important role. I know anecdotally of a very popular Malaysian movie, which the director told me his initial cut was a completely different film. But he had hired a professional editor because there were problems with the initial cut. And there was a professional editor that came in from overseas and looked at all the footage and put a new movie together, which turned out to be quite brilliant. I won't name the movie. It's his story to tell, not my story. But it's happened even here in Malaysia. So, yes, the edit is very, very important. At Daphne M88 asks, since the last Aquaman movie trailer, a lot of movie trailers have had Malay captions. Why is that? So, as far as I can tell, it's been Warner movies because we've seen it with Aquaman and Furiosa. And I think the studio is just trying something new. I think all they're trying to do is include Malay captions as to maybe be more inclusive to the Malay audience. I don't know about you, Bahir, but I'm not sure what impact that has. Because obviously, for 50, 60, 70 years of cinema in Malaysia, all of our audiences have been watching trailers which have been primarily in English. And I don't think captions in a different language has affected whether or not they're going to go and see a movie. I think it really depends on their taste, whether the movie actually speaks to them, and whether the movie actually gets good reviews. Because if we know anything, FOMO in Malaysia is the biggest motivator to go and watch a film in the cinema.
It doesn't do the job that studios think it will do, right? Because if I'm primarily Malay speaking and I've gone in to watch, I don't know, say Sheriff or The Experts because I like and only watch Malay movies, if I suddenly see the Furiosa trailer with Bahasa captions on it, it's not going to make me go and watch Furiosa because I know it's not in Bahasa. I think it's a tactic. I think it's something they're trying. Again, like you said, Umar, I think they're trying it on the big films.
It's different overseas. Huh? When you see
It's different.
Japanese
Absolutely.
captions, it's because the movie's been dubbed into Japanese. It's
Yes,
the same in
German
Europe.
or French.
When you go to those countries, you have to look for the non-dubbed screenings. Like I remember I was in Italy one time and they had released a new Tom Hanks, Dan Brown movie, and there were some screenings in English, but most of the screenings were dubbed into Italian. So it's not like these movies are dubbed into Malay. It's just the captions on the trailer.
I actually think that will stop. I think that they'll realize that financially it makes no sense because they'll have to cut a new trailer with new captions and graphics and all that. And that's not done locally. That will probably be done by the American studio. So I just don't think it'll be worth it for them. Nathan Hugh 97 asks, is 2024 the year of great or bad movies? I find myself going to the cinema less compared to last year. I think the strike thing is a big one.
I was just going to say, there are fewer movies out of Hollywood anyway. So the first half of the year saw a trickle release of films. That said, May is really too soon to tell whether it's a year of great or bad movies because a lot of studios save their most critically acclaimed films until the end of the year because they want to get caught up with award season. And it's not that award ceremonies don't consider movies that were released in February. It's just that viewers often forget. So by the time you hit November, you need to make sure that people remember that Dune Part 2 was an amazing film.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we haven't had great movies until now. I mean, if you go back and look at our Goggler page, we've given quite a few 9 and 10 reviews. Dune Part 2, Furiosa was fantastic. There have been a lot of good movies, but they have been far and few between. So yes, the strike had a huge impact, which is probably why you are going to the cinemas a lot less. However, it might also be because you're not a fan of horror or Asian movies, because in that vacuum, local cinemas have been bringing in a lot of Thai movies and Indonesian movies, and they've been trying to fill it up with non-Hollywood product. This next question kind of ties in to the last question. This is from @Travesty, who asks, with news of cinema chains closing down its branches in rapid succession, is this a sign that cinemas in Malaysia are declining? So you would have seen the news that GSC in particular have been closing down a lot of branches. Now, A lot of those branches that they're closing down are the branches that they acquired when MBO shut down during the pandemic, because GSE came in and took over some of their locations. Some of them were key, some of them weren't. So, Starling, for example, is a big key location. Meanwhile, the smaller locations they have found weren't making much money, and so they've decided to close it down. That said, in a recent earnings call, GSE did announce that they are opening more locations in Malaysia. So they just opened KL East, I believe. And so I don't think cinema in general is in decline, or at least no more than it is all over the world. Like, everyone is facing the same problem. If you look at this recent Memorial Weekend, it's been one of the worst box office takings in what, 4 decades, Bahir, something like
Yep.
that. And that's also because of streaming, of people staying at home and watching so much content. Like, they're inundated with stuff. And so cinema takings have gone down. Compound that with the strikes and the lack of movies coming in, people feel, oh, wait, there's nothing great actually to watch. So I might as well stay at home and watch Disney Plus or Netflix or Apple TV or HBO.
Yeah.
So there are all of these factors, but I'm not going to say it's the end of cinema as we know it, because it's almost always too soon to make that call.
I think that this is a problem that needs to be addressed by multiple parties, by both the cinema holders, specifically in Malaysia, the government needs to get involved, and I think the studios need to do something about it as well. Because
So in Malaysia, the government needs to get involved because entertainment tax is a very, very stupid thing. Yes.
I'm not even talking about the government needs to get involved in making movies. I think they need to get out of the way of the creative industry. However, I think they need to be more supportive of the business side of the creative industry, and that is by doing away with the entertainment tax, or if not, funneling it differently, right? France has got a very interesting way that they treat entertainment tax. Not only does it foster a cinematic going experience, it also fosters and helps the industry, but we can do that another time. I think studios need to do better job of making films. I think they need to do a better job of respecting the cinema going audience, right? When something like Fall Guy showing up on streamers within weeks of it breaking in the cinema, that's not a good indication. You're training your audience to just wait 3 weeks to watch it at home. In fact, you're training your audience to expect this movie to be a bad one, so don't even bother going to the cinema because it's going to show up at the streamers within 3 weeks.
I will also say, at Travesty, if you Google that question, on the one hand, you will find a dozen op-eds talking about the decline and end of cinema, but then on the other hand, you will find the same number of articles talking about the decline and end of streaming. And I think it goes back to this idea of us living in a Wild West type of space. Nobody knows what's happening at the moment. Everyone is experimenting and trying things. Studios are throwing money at streaming, and just, it's a bottomless pit and nothing seems to be sticking. So there's going to be some sort of consolidation over the next few years. And the pandemic issues haven't totally been overcome yet. I'm not talking about things not opening up and people are too slow coming back to cinema. I just meant that the pandemic has trained a different sort of behavior. You were stuck at home, you had streaming, you had options, and so all of your habits have changed. And I think all of that comes into play with regards to ticket sales and whether people are going out to see the movies.
At a time when anybody in their 40s or even in their 30s would have picked up the habit of going to the cinema or just even going to a mall in your 17s, 18s, and 19s, just hang out with friends, a lot of the younger generation didn't have that because they had to do it through the pandemic. So they never picked up the habit of spending 20 ringgit at the cinema or sneaking into a cinema or sharing a bucket of popcorn, right? It just never formed. It's not that they've lost it, it's just that they never formed that habit. So that is going to be a problem. These major parties need to get involved and figure this shit out. Yuliong07 asks, have you guys seen Siksa Kubur? Did the butchered ending make any sense to you, or am I just plain dumb? Yuliong, we haven't seen Siksa, as it's called here in Malaysia. I think we have seen the trailer. I think we have seen the butchered ending. I think the butchered ending makes sense. I think However, I'm willing to say that it probably is not you.
I don't think it's you, and I refuse to watch in the cinemas. So far, what everyone has DM'd us and dropped messages on our social media have told us, it looks like the movie was completely and utterly butchered. And I'm just going to wait for it to hit Netflix or something, because obviously Joko Anwar has a very good relationship with Netflix. He's got a
Yep.
series coming out really soon, which looks very exciting. It's very Guillermo del Toro-ish, and I'm quite excited to see that. But I'm going to wait until it comes to Netflix, because I think it's not that I don't want to support cinemas. God knows we always do. I don't want to support our LPF's bad behavior, and I think this is completely unnecessary. So I can't answer that question, because I refuse to watch this movie until I can see a proper version.
That's related to the following question. At 04562188 asks, films like Sixa get a release but are butchered by LPF. Is it worth it? We say no.
And a lot of the time, if there are press screenings, we can go watch it and tell you what to do.
Yes.
And we're very open about that. We often tell you, listen, there are some cuts, but it's not noticeable. It doesn't affect the storyline. And it's still a great big screen experience. Because a lot of the time, I think it's important to have that big screen experience, because a lot of movies really make it worthwhile. However, if something is as badly butchered as Sixa, then it truly isn't worth your 25 ringgit lah.
LPF can do cuts. LPF have done cuts that are intelligent, is probably too strong a word, but that doesn't affect the story that you're watching. If it does, we will tell you, and I say don't bother. 0456218888. Your use of the term butchered is important here, because if it's butchered, then yeah, don't do it.
And Imis asks, what do you think of VR cinema? Do you think movies are a social affair?
I think cinema is a social affair.
Agreed.
Just in the same way that watching a recording of the Phantom of the Opera on stage at home on your TV isn't the same experience as going to a place to go and watch it. Just as how I've had experiences where I've seen a magic show on TV and then I go to the actual theater and watch the same performer perform, it's a completely different experience. I think, yes, movies are a social affair. I think VR cinema is not something I do.
I'm not sure. I haven't encountered any kind of VR cinema that doesn't feel gimmicky yet. Also, because VR is a very specific thing, right? For movies to work, I think they need to be created for VR. It's the same way when a movie is adapted into 3D, the impact just isn't there. It's the same way when you go and see a Screen X film. No matter how much they try, it just feels a bit dumb. So if you're into those sorts of gimmicks, if you're into the theme park ride version of films, then sure, I think you will go and have a good time even at the 4DX screening. But a VR experience, I still really enjoy watching movies with other people. If only because I enjoy their reactions, I enjoy laughing together. I remember watching The Last Jedi for the first time, and that gasp when the spaceship crashes into the Imperial, is it a Star Destroyer? I think it's a Star Destroyer, was amazing. The silence and then the collective gasp of the cinema, like that is an experience that I live for when I go and watch movies. The spontaneous laughter whenever something silly happens on screen.
Or that moment when Captain America finally says Avengers Assemble.
Oh, for sure.
That particular one was like a drug to you and me, right? Remember, we went to go see it 4 times on opening day because we just wanted to get that.
More of that. We wanted a fix, right?
Yeah, and I think VR cinema, even if it's collectively in a room, you know, like those silent discos where everybody's wearing
it's not the same.
It feels weird. Yeah, it just doesn't feel the same, right? We're all listening to the same song, sure, but at the back of your mind, you know it's kind of not the same.
I want to experience watching a film or a TV show on the Apple Vision Pro just to see what that's like. Also, I know Disney have partnered with them to release an interactive What If episode, and I'm really curious to know what that's like. So I'm curious about the experiences, but I don't think it'll be something I do all the time.
I think there has to be a difference. For example, I've seen the trials of what the Apple Vision Pro can do when you're watching football or when you're watching a sporting event, right? You can have these multiple pop-ups, you can have different angles, you can sort of literally walk close to the field to catch a moment. And I feel like it needs to be thought out that way. It cannot just be the fact that you now can have an infinite size screen. That's not enough. Gamma Ray 07 asks, what should I watch on Prime until Fallout Season 2 is out? Well, Gamma Ray, get a pen and paper.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be a while.
There is a lot of great stuff on Prime, man. So, start off with The Boys. You've got at least 3 seasons of that. You've got Invincible to watch. You've got The Boys spin-off, Gen V, also very good. In Malaysia, you can watch The Continental. I know it's only 3 episodes, but still they're feature-length episodes. That is excellent. If you're like me and like yourself a good police procedural, there are multiple seasons of Bosch with Titus Welliver, which I am watching at the moment, and I am truly binging my way through it because it is such an excellent series.
Yep.
There is Mozart in the Jungle, also
Fantastic.
a fantastic series.
I'm sorry, you've forgotten Clarkson's Farm. 3 seasons of that, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
We really liked The Idea of You. That's also on there.
I'm totally blanking on this, but what is the name of the Philip K. Dick adaptation where the Nazis win World War II?
Man in the High Castle.
Man in the High Castle is a brilliant show.
Reacher, fantastic. We loved Daisy Jones and the Six.
The Jack Ryan series is really good.
There's also the comedy Upload, which was really very good as well.
That was fun.
Good Omens is there. Jake Gyllenhaal's Roadhouse is there. Honestly, Gamma Ray, just DM us. We'll be here a while.
We'll be here a while.
Everybody
But
else can
also,
sit down. Yeah.
if you are a fan of Indian content,
Oh,
there is a
fantastic.
ton of great Indian TV shows, Indian movies, just very well produced, great stories. There's a whole bunch there. Seriously, just DM us if you want any more recommendations. But I think we've given you enough to last you, the year and a half it's going to take for Fallout Season 2 to come out.
Just as an aside to everybody else who might be interested, Batman the Animated Complete Series is on Amazon Prime Malaysia. So, do that.
At Y Sasmin C asks, could you recommend some local coming-of-age movies? I enjoyed the first Gol and Ginchu movie.
Yeah, okay. I mean, Sepet is a classic.
Is that coming of age? Okay, yeah, that is coming of age. Actually, a lot of Yasmin's movies are coming of age.
Or coming of age adjacent.
Yes, that's right. Talent Time, Sepet. Yasmin Ahmad had a very unique style. And I think if you like her style, then you can watch all of her movies because they really deliver on all that stuff that you liked about her. Her movies are probably the ones that I would recommend. I really didn't like Terbaik Dari Langit. I thought it was awful.
This isn't coming of age, but I'm just using any excuse I can get to recommend it. But La Luna?
There are coming of age elements in there.
Yeah, I also don't care.
It's just an excellent movie that you should watch.
It's an excellent movie that people should watch. The only way I wouldn't recommend La Luna is if somebody said they wanted a local horror movie. But then again, there's the horrors of humanity in that, I guess, on some level. The horrors of religion gone wild.
Yes.
So La Luna, I think, just whatever, just watch it. There was a period when all we just did was coming of age. That was Redcom's bread and butter.
It was. Coming of age and rom-coms. Not all of them were very good, but the Bernard Chorley movies in particular are very good and very decent. They're also, ironically, movies I don't think you can make in 2024.
Yeah, I agree.
We did live in an environment that was slightly more open back in the day, it feels like anyway.
At Fly1 asks, where's the review of Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare? Well, we haven't seen the film.
We haven't seen the movie because we were waiting for a legal avenue by which to watch it. As you know, we don't pirate movies or do anything dodgy in that sense. And so I believe Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is actually now available for purchase on VOD.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I think now we can watch it and review it. But we need to find the time as well because we've been a little inundated with a whole bunch of stuff that's been coming out. But we'll get to it. At Shaft Farizal asks, what's a type of movie that the Malaysian film industry hasn't made yet? Now, in general,
I've got one.
I would say that there are a lot of genres where the Malaysian film industry hasn't made a good version of yet.
Well, I mean, that's a little unfair because that's a very big list.
It's a huge list. It's a huge list. I think with the experts, we saw them delve into the heist movie, and it was a very interesting effort. But what is your one?
The globe trotting adventure.
Oh,
Because we Malaysians never leave well, very rarely ever leave the country when we're shooting a film.
like a James Bond style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a James Bond / even like an Indiana Jones type thing, where it doesn't have to be globe trotting where they pop into a country and sit there for 2 scenes and leave. But there was that local Amazon Prime series, That Cover Girl, that was shot in Paris. They shot a lot of scenes in Paris, actually.
Bernard Chorley shot quite a few movies. Cappadocia,
Yeah, Istanbul, there's
Istanbul,
one. So there are those, and those are nice. I think those are great. Adrian Tay did on
Malbat.
location stuff with Malbat, and that's great.
But you're right, the globe trotting adventure.
Come at me, bro. But I don't think we've done a decent superhero film either. I think Chichat Man is dog shit.
Astro's promoting the hell out of Keluang Man, which is supposed to come out next year. So hopefully they might have stumbled onto something and we may have a good superhero flick, but we haven't had
Yeah.
one yet.
You haven't had one yet. Yeah.
I don't think we've done good sci-fi either. I mean, XX-Ray is a lot of fun, but it was also, 30 years ago now? And I don't think we've done a good science fiction movie that's somehow rooted in our own Malaysian culture. Also, there are some genres that very hard to make work in a Malaysian context. Like the road trip movie is very difficult because we don't have enough roads.
I tried it.
I know you did. I know
I
you
tried
did.
it.
But he actually tried to make a road trip movie. Terbaik
Yeah.
dari Langit was a road trip movie. But
Yep.
of course, it feels like something that is so uniquely American because the idea of going out on the road is something that they do, that they traverse this massive country of theirs and they encounter, heck, they may all be Americans, but they encounter so many different cultures along the way.
It's that thing of like, for an American, driving 4 hours is not a big deal because technically they're still in the same state.
Yeah. We drive 4 hours away in a different country.
Yeah, we're almost in a different country already. At Jumperjacks86 asks, will we ever get to see Mahershala Ali play Blade?
I honestly don't think so.
I don't think that's happening anymore.
I mean, a couple of reasons, right? Feige and Bob Iger have announced that they're going to streamline the amount of content they release. So fewer TV shows, fewer movies every year. And in my brain, that means Blade gets put on the back burner because it doesn't fit with the Thunderbolts and all of the other Avengers-ish characters that are in play at the moment.
Like Blade would have worked under and of course there was that Sting, but it would have worked with the Black Knight sort of side of Marvel.
Correct. What I think they should do is just make a Blade TV show.
Oh, Daredevil-esque
I
Blade
would
TV show.
love to see a Daredevil-esque Blade TV show. And the reason I say we may not see him play Blade is because he's an in-demand, incredibly popular actor. At some point, he's going to be like, screw this, I'm moving on. Because that contractual obligation is going to get in the way with other stuff that he might want to do.
Which is strange because Blade had started production and stopped after a month to rework script, etc. So honestly, I can easily see Marvel Studios going, you know what? We'll just burn that footage. We'll try again in another couple of years.
At Mark DePaulo, do young people not like movies because they aren't serialized or short? And have streaming services given up on stocking or promoting older films? I'm worried that movies are in trouble and theater ticket sales reflect that. Now, Mark's a friend of the show and he lives in America. And Mark, we can tell you that we are seeing similar behavior right here in Malaysia. So it's a global phenomenon. It's not just an American phenomenon. I don't know if the first part of your question is true, but I do think that social media, TikTok, YouTube content has affected the way young people consume stuff. And 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours is, like what Bahir said earlier, not something they are used to because they didn't grow up consuming long form content like that.
Also, just to double down on why Netflix is terrible, we've read of anecdotal evidence on how Netflix's executives are talking about how they want their content to be more second screen. They want their shows to be able to live on an audience member playing with their phones while they're in air quotes watching something on Netflix, right? So the stories are written differently, the action is designed differently, because you know that you're not only competing against a mobile phone, but you're ceding primary attention to the mobile phone. This is just background noise. Do young people not like movies because they aren't serialized or short? I think it's possible they don't like going to the cinema because it's 2 hours they cannot play with their phones. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I just mean that as a habit, a lot of young people are used to watching something in air quotes with their phones in their hand.
As to your second question, I think that may just go back to licensing. Because in America, there are tons of streaming services that kind of focus just on classic films. I think TCM probably has their own app. Criterion has its own app, and you can find fantastic, classic, older movies there. And maybe the Netflixes of the world and the HBOs of the world aren't in on that licensing and they aren't interested in it so much. But I think you guys have a lot more options than we do when it comes to watching these classic movies.
Even with our limited number of streaming options, we have a lot of options already. The MGM back catalog is on Amazon Prime, if you didn't know, right? Netflix has got some of the older HBO stuff. Whether streaming services want to promote it, I guess not, because they're making their own content. So there's no reason to be promoting an older film that's owned by a different studio. That is a very easy example of why they don't. At Lego Fan in PJ asks, in honor of JLo's latest film Misadventures on Netflix, what's your favorite / most memorable film starring singers, and conversely, worst or most unconvincing movies? P.S. Socialites and self-delusional cosmetic entrepreneurs don't count. For me, most memorable film starring singers is a VHS recording of 1963's Summer Holiday, where Cliff Richard and the Shadows drove a double-decker bus from England all the way to Athens with a few songs sprinkled around involving a love story and a young woman. Most unconvincing movie starring singers, on the other hand, has to be the 96 adaptation of the Andrew Lloyd Webber and Rice musical Evita, because just like how Eva Perón actually did nothing for Argentina, Madonna really does nothing much for this movie.
I will say, any movie with Madonna has a tendency of being terrible. Swept Away comes to mind.
Except that short film she did
With BMW?
With BMW, directed by her not yet then husband Guy Ritchie, I think. That was fantastic.
There have been quite a lot of good movies with musicians. I really love 8 Mile. I think A Star
Good
is
shout.
Born is fantastic. I think Lady Gaga was very, very good in that.
Yep.
I also think Labyrinth is one of the greats. And I know The Prestige wasn't starring David Bowie, but he was still fucking good in it.
Yeah.
And to be fair, J-Lo in Selena, like not the Netflix one, the original Selena, was very, very good.
Also, J-Lo in that rom-com with Owen Wilson.
Oh, that wasn't bad. Marry
wasn't
Me,
bad.
that was okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still a fan of Made in Manhattan, like the older
Yes,
rom-coms,
you're
for
right.
sure.
Yeah. Bad Boys, Will Smith.
Oh, we forget that Will Smith is a musician.
Dreamgirls. I mean, how far back do you want to go?
If you consider Jack Black more of a musician than an actor, then School of Rock, obviously, and a lot of Jack Black stuff is always entertaining.
I feel like he's actor first, though.
Oh, wait. Blues Brothers. I know the
Blues
leads
Brothers.
aren't musicians, but they were actors that made some really fucking great songs.
Also, Blues Brothers had a lot of,
It was just chock full of cameo musicians.
who did not act very well. at
Terrible.
all.
Terrible
Yeah.
acting.
I don't know. The Elvis stuff was. Look, the Elvis stuff was never meant to be serious, right? So they were very good. Frank Sinatra has done a couple of really good ones.
I forgot. Cher. Moonstruck. What a great
Cher,
movie.
Moonstruck was fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's become less.
Wait.
What? What?
Grease. Olivia Newton-John, motherfucker.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
The
Grease.
Bodyguard. Whitney frickin' Houston.
You're right.
Oh, I forgot about all of these. Okay, yeah. There are a lot of movies, man.
What I was gonna say was that pre the internet age, I think there were a lot more, right? Like
Yes.
Whitney Houston's turn in The Bodyguard was great, powerful acting.
Also, Maki Makla, he made good.
Oh, Maki Mark made very good. You know, he wasn't a great musician, but turned out to be a way better actor. His brother, Donnie Wahlberg's also a very good actor. Hasn't done anything major, but
Hey, he was in 14 seasons of Blue Bloods, my friend.
I was gonna say Blue Bloods is he's fantastic in Blue Bloods. I guess we're partly not answering your question with regards to the unconvincing movie portion, but I think it's the thing of like, if you are willing to look past the last 30, 40 years, I think you'll find that a lot of the performers tend to be double, if not triple threats.
More recently, though, I think Selena Gomez has done very well for herself. I mean, Only Murders is very, very good. And I hear that her performance in the recent Khan entry was absolutely fantastic.
I don't know. I still feel like we're not answering Lego Fan and PJ's question here.
Well, we've given him the most memorable ones, and there are quite a few. So I think it's not a rarity that musicians make that transition. I think for the unconvincing ones, even the good musicians have had bad films. And I think a lot of that maybe has to do with poor directing and writing. Maybe the only musician that has been consistently terrible in everything he has done as an actor is John Bon Jovi.
Oh, I can't think of a Bon Jovi film.
He was in a rom-com where he was terrible. He was in U571 where he had an unceremonious death, and I completely missed the fact that he was shot on top of a submarine. Halfway through the film, I was like, wait, where's Bon Jovi? Is he dead already? Yeah, Bon Jovi has done a few movies and he's been very, very bad.
The other one that we've forgotten is Ricky Martin.
Who's really fucking good. Yeah, Palm Springs.
Not even just Palm Springs.
Oh, in the
Versace one.
Versace movie.
The assassination of Gianni Versace. That was fantastic.
There we go. We hope we've answered your question, Lego Fan and PJ. So that brings us to the end of another exciting episode of Ask Us Anything. Keep your questions coming in and we shall do our best to answer them. Reach out on all of our social media feeds, Goggler MY. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.